Okay, so this is just going to be a response to the response by Nemus. I'm just going to make it quick. First of all, I want to apologize if my video came off as disrespectful. I agree with where Nemus comes from. I think as politically, we share some of the same ideals. Um, it was it was really more a disagreement about silly things, basically. Um, but one more point about gene centrism, and I'm sorry to keep bringing this up. But I don't like that you gave it a bad rap because it's actually a very interesting topic to read about if you have time. If you want to look up intragenomic conflict, and there's a whole bunch of books about it at different levels of difficulty, but it does talk about areas in which gene centrism does apply, and areas in which genes do compete for each other. And uh, usually, the cases that you study in these for this is like bacteria and viruses, where the genome is very small. So the individual genes are competing for a very small amount of genomic space. Think about it as kind of like a hard drive. If there's a small hard drive, there's a lot of competition between the files for space. And for example, if for example one gene starts making a lot of copies of itself, it causes problems. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what bothered me. Yeah, it's actually very interesting. The second thing is something that I think we now agree on, and that is that, yeah, I do think that was unfair to blame Dawkins for what had happened. And Nemus did mention Herbert Spencer in his response, and that does bring up another good point, which is that scientific racism is a lot older than Dawkins. It's a lot older than either one of us. Um, and there's also a separate point of maybe this is a point of a difference of perception, maybe. Uh, but for example, in the 19th century, we had phrenology used as um, scientific justification for this type of anti-poor, anti-Irish, anti-black policies by the government. Um, now, this is where I think we diverge. I don't think those things are still the philosophical justification. Um, and again, maybe this is just perception, but if you look at the example of Watson, who was ostracized for his comments on race, I don't think scientific racism is the root of neoliberal policies anymore, for the reason that scientific racism as a view is no longer politically correct or socially acceptable as a viewpoint. I'm not saying that it does not exist. Anybody can go online and find somebody that will say, we should cut welfare because black people or white or Hispanics do certain things, or the Irish. Um, but I think the current justifications are different, and in either case, I think maybe it's better to focus on the incorrectness of the actual neoliberalism instead of what might be the root of those things. And again, I'm not saying that there's not scientific racist neoliberals. I mean, I probably know some. I mean, Well, if you hang out in, as Hispanic circles, we still have people that support Franco. I mean, I've met actual fascists that support a return to fascism. So that there's a lot of crazy ideas floating around. So I'm not going to deny that. But no, personally, I do not agree that entirely the main, that this is a thing that is being pushed by, that this is the push behind neoliberalism. And I guess that's why I prefer science to this kind of political stuff. Yeah, I don't know how you would quantify um, what the impetus is behind neoliberal ideology. If we're going to stick to the neoliberal label, and maybe as a final point, just to close it off, it also kind of indirectly gives neoliberalism too much credit. The the type of um, the type of reasoning that I come across when you read about this, and I don't remember where I read this. I don't know if it was in a book or an article, uh, but it was just discussing Wall Street executives and how they justified how much money they were making compared to, say, I guess somebody working at Burger King. Um, it basically argued that they had to convince themselves that the reason they were making so much money is because they were better than everybody else, or smarter than them, even though it wasn't true. And I think that, and that's, I don't think that's scientific racism. Um, the I'm going to speak about at least American uh, this type of ideology here, but it's usually this kind of Ayn Randian masturbatory fantasy where the reason why I'm doing better than everybody else is because I'm better than everybody else. That it's not so much scientific racism; it's this kind of ego-driven. What would you say? And it doesn't even have to be limited to people that are successful. You see a lot of unsuccessful libertarians on the internet, um, ironically, advocating for policies that would hurt them. Uh, because, again, this sort of pull yourself up by the bootstraps ideology. And, I think that's more what's influencing things, not so much scientific racism.